I hope this is clear for you all. So I'm doing Sun Transit Gate 15. Today's the 20th. Of course, it just entered the 20th. It's sometime in the middle of the night as I like to record. And this is going to be June 20th to June 25th. I'm calling it the Great Heights and Corresponding Depths of Compassionate Beingness. A nice little simple title. And looking at the human design graph right now at this moment, as I have on screen. Hopefully you can see it. You could see in the middle here, you might be able to see my cursor. If you go to the middle G center diamond between the root center and the throat center, you'll see on the bottom left-hand side of it, there's a number 15 and it's in a red circle, signifying definition through Jupiter entering gate 15, as well as the sun entering gate 15. This is significant for the sun. That's why the sun's in gate 15, line 1. Jupiter's been there since maybe the 9th or 10th, so it's in gate 5 now. So we have this week a sun conjunct Jupiter. This is June 20th. So it's Friday, June 20th to, let's see, 21st, 22nd, 23rd to Wednesday, June 25th. And this marks our passage out of the last gate, which was symbolic of the Aries vanishing point squaring both um, Neptune, sorry, actually Jupiter squaring and entering Cancer, and gate 15 squaring the Aries vanishing point where both Neptune and Saturn are. And the intensity of this particular geometry will intensify as we go into July. On the 7th, Uranus will enter Gemini, creating a midpoint trine to Pluto. So Uranus will trine Pluto, and both together will have a midpoint at the Aries vanishing point, creating what's called a magic triangle, which will be symbolically created on July 18th. And this is going to signify and amplify all the themes of the outer planets involved. With Pluto, we have destruction and rebirth. With Uranus, we have Uranus entering Gemini. We have the planet of change entering the sign of technology and the mind. So our tech, as we've been discussing already, is going to go through a huge revolution. It's already happening. And Saturn is going to give us the reality checks to make sure whatever we're doing, we go slow and we take our time. And Neptune's going to create that vision, that movie that we all went right away. But it's great with Saturn there because it's slowing it down so that it's giving us the reality checks so that AI doesn't move so quickly to kind of take over our ability to make decisions, our self-determinism. And that is under threat. A lot of you, I'm sure, are observing that a lot of these AI tech companies are basically above the law and are attempting to create situations where they cannot be sued. And these are companies that are attempting to allow AI to control the government, to set everything up so it's all controlled and all decisions are made by, I mean, Skynet, just basically Skynet. I don't need to complicate things with all the fancy descriptions they like to parade in the media. I'm not interested. They're describing Skynet. And so with Saturn there, we get a lot of reality checks to make sure that we're on board with the evolution of technology and how it's working through us and how we're mastering it and making sure we're not merging with it. And that means that we're retaining our ability to make decisions and not giving up our seniority and our personal power to make decisions to some algorithm, to some robotic, heartless, compassionateless, smokeless fire type digital energy. Whatever it is or whatever it's not. It's certainly not heart, and it doesn't possess the groundedness of the human essence or soul. But it is a force that we're having to reckon with, without a doubt. And currently, we're all trapped kind of in our own algorithms, our own kind of world of repetition that's fed back to us in a loop through our specified social media accounts and visuals. And so there is the whole idea of a kind of world where a global, that erroneous term, global world is really fractured. It's really doesn't exist at all. Rather, it's the vision of some early sci-fi. I think it was E.M. Forrester who wrote this specific sci-fi novella I'm trying to think of right now, where everybody was in their own little pods trapped inside. That's where we're at. That's what it seems. We're all trapped in the algorithmic loop. And so we don't have a one world-based reality. Instead, we have these multiple reinforced, streamed little worlds. And before that gets solidified by Saturn, we want to make sure that our Neptunian vision is not completely an illusion or delusion, but rather that we are able to retain our connections with other humans, and keep our integrity and our authority clear. So we're determining our own life path. And gate 15 is significant here, and I'll get there in a minute, because it signifies a part of the essence of change that's coming to gate 55. And that's over here in the solar plexus center, which is transforming our emotional energy into an authority, into an awareness center. This is very powerful, and this is more evidence of human beings not being top-heavy monsters anymore, but rather truly living from our awareness centers of the gut and emotional feeling clarity awareness. And as we go through this gradual shift into 2027 of greater understanding, we're going to be better able to sit in our hearts, those of us who are choosing to retain the path of being human and not overindulging in the traumatic conditionings of the transhumanist agenda, which is basically just attempting to empty our bodies so they can insert their entities inside, and which we're seeing on a day-to-day level through multiple means, which is quite disturbing. A lot of hearts are being broken because of that, because they're our family, they're our friends, but it is occurring. But the rest of us are finding ways to continue to ground in nature. And in grounding, there's nothing more important than that, as I seem to hammer on a nail every day with clients, especially clients that have a lot of fire, air in their charts, or a lot of water, and, don't naturally retain earth energy. And so thus important to connect your Piscean ruled feet to the earth to take in and pull that energy through and let it flow through the body, especially at this time right now with the vanishing point being right here in gate 25, where you see there's activation during the Sun Gate transit in 15. These are all the love gates of humanity, the 10, the 15, the 25. Everything's activated here except for the 46, which will be activated for the Virgo Libra eclipse coming on September 21st. And so maybe just to better ground the themes that I'm bringing forth and or to revisit that, the Aries vanishing point is all about a new dawn for humanity. It's a rebirthing. It's not an ending. It's where choices are going to be made. Great decisions are going to occur in this area, empowering us. And on some level, it is going to be a negotiation between destruction and renewal. And it's going to be a pendulum that's going to go back and forth until it's met its polaric balance. And really, I'll use this moment to talk about gate 15. In essence, it is a gate that symbolizes polarities. Because in general meaning, this gate symbolizes extremes. It is a Gemini gate, which symbolizes, the two faces, the two directions, communication, the mind, the inner world and the outer world, the self and the other. There's a lot of polarities involved here. Here specifically in gate 15, what we're looking at is an energy that at its lowest frequency is just kind of a dull awareness. And the kind of self-possession or self-obsession from Gates 10's sense of self and behavior into polarities of extremes in order to gauge feeling and transformation. This is a lower frequency to be caught up in such extremes. Because really, on some level, let me look at my notes here. Is that where I started my notes? On some level, what 15 represents is how humans are able to experience different expressions of consciousness. It's more so almost to the fact that we are a means by which the universe experiences these different polarities. And so we, in a sense, are a bridge for certain conflicts to take place. And 15 symbolizes a rhythm. It's part of the channel of flow, the channel of rhythm with the 5. The 5 symbolizes time, and the 15 symbolizes patterns. And together, it's the channel of flow. It's a mammalian channel that all animals have. So when humans have this whole channel here, the 15 and the 5, it's symbolic of those who really need to be in nature and spend time in nature and be in flow. And even have a daily ritual is usually very helpful for those with this channel. Those who have the 15 and not the 5 may find discipline and rhythm hard to have and to achieve. And this mastery can be challenging. And to ground that 5 energy, you need that daily routine. It's really important. So the 15 is symbolic of the love of humanity, fluidity, extremes, variety, because it's a gate that comes out of the G center, which is the hub of self, love, direction, purpose, giving and receiving, as well as identity. And so, though great depths and heights can be experienced from this sense of love for humanity, there is a pendulum that moves and where we move to try and find the center. And life doesn't indeed exist and consist of repetitious patterns and rhythms. We have astrology, which is a sky clock. And here I'm not talking about Joy-Tish astrology. I'm talking about astrology is guided by the four seasons, the 4 points. And what I mean here is that astrology is a sort of sky clock. It's a clock. We know where this symbolic language, how it's working. Whether we look to the past or to the future, we know exactly where things are. And this provides us with a gauge for knowing things, knowing when a death may occur in our family, knowing when it's time to begin a new career or end a relationship or begin a new venture or travel. And and thus it does seem that on some level, this holographic verse that we're in, not material verse, because we're not in a material verse. Saturn provides us the illusion of a reality. But we know with Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, those terrorist planetary energies invade and disturb this kind of three density reality. And thus, what we really have is more so kind of holographic that we're in that has these consistent patterns that repeat in various fractal variations. And us as humans, we experience these variations as they occur, and we notice consistencies and repetitions and variations of those repetitions. And it's really our spirit, our attitude, that denotes how we respond to it, where our consciousness is from moment to moment, how we observe it. And I want to go over a recent example I was talking about with a friend that's like a really brilliant example. The movie was playing recently in the theater and I missed it. I wanted to go see it. And it's Revenge of the Sith. Star Wars is Revenge of the Sith. That's number 3, Star Wars 3 with Anakin Skywalker. It's a development of Anakin throughout 1, 2, and 3 to becoming Darth Vader. And I'm mentioning this because the Star Wars verse, or at least in this specific film, is one of the very rare films where you have characters that actually take position of either being described as bringing some sort of balance or represent symbolically something, some character, some archetype that expresses balance. And what I mean is usually what we have in, the great myths are represented on the screen of our time, Lord of the Rings, what are some others? There's so many great fantasy series. There's The Wheel of Time. There's, I'm forgetting them now. There's so many. I hesitate to say Harry Potter, but of course that's one of them. And so is Game of Thrones. This is all literature. This is all books that we've read. Even the Twilight books are important because of the two different typos, early species of humans that are represented in those books, similar to vampire books, but especially in Twilight. These are all significant stories that we tell that relate to our origins and to our histories of where we are now, as well as the capacity for humans to take an identity between the two different polarities. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. I'm trying to get at polarities. There was a book that came out by David, let's see if I can remember, David Hawkins. And in this book, he had this kind of vertical measurement tool of frequency. And it was like set at from a low bottom, at lower frequency humans and experiences to the highest vibrating humans at 1,000 and there's YouTubes that cover this like, oh, what do you vibe at? And that's all fun and games, but the spectrum of consciousness is really not a straight line. That doesn't make sense. A real spectrum of consciousness is going to be represented by a horizontal line with a center point. And what you're going to have on the left or the right, well, we'll just say left for some symbolism's sake. You might have extreme selfish energetics of expression. And on the extreme right, you might have extreme selflessness expression. And humans, we all the time are subject to wanting to adapt one specific side of that, as if that one side symbolizes an ideal of who we are, who we should be. And we see this represented in all these great mythical stories that are just repetitions of the same stories that we've been playing with and writing with and singing and forever. And so the easiest example is Lord of the Rings, right? We have Saruman on the side of, let's say, the left-hand path, let's say the left side of selfishness. And then we have Gandalf on the right-hand side, selflessness, having his particular role and respecting his own role and not seeking power by attempting to utilize the rings. And there can be complex arguments made for both of them not even really representing those polarities, which is why I want to bring up Star Wars, because I think it's the best example of a representation of an interesting ideal to be a balanced human being or mystical being in beingness. And when I say beingness, and I know I say that a lot, this is a very significant point that I make. Because we're not seeming beings. We're not, oh, I'm human or I'm a fucking robot or I'm this or no, it's not. We're seeming that we're alive or we seem to have consciousness. No, there's none of that. We do have consciousness. We are in beingness. That is the ideal. That is the realness of our essence. And here in the spectrum of consciousness that we have to imagine because I'm not creating it on the screen, what I'm getting to is just imagine a horizontal line. And so on the left you have selfishness, on the right you have selflessness. So in Star Wars you have the Jedi Council, which represents some type of holier than thou group of enlightened beings, let's say. And then you have the Sith Lords, and there's never more than one or two Sith Lords. There's never three because two will gang up on the third and kill him. And then you'll have one master and one servant. And, which side is better? You know? Well, obviously the Jedis are better, right? Because they stand for all that's good and hopeful and compassionate for humanity living in peace and freedom, right? And then the Sith Lords are obviously evil, correct? Because they have a certain fighting style, right? Where they utilize all their emotions. The Jedi, if you notice, are all about repressing their emotions and living from a certain meditative center. Is that possible? Of course it's possible. Is it some kind of idealized state of being that not all can reach? I imagine so. So we have these two sides that are both kind of extreme, if you think about it. The Jedi fighting style is more Buddhist, or usually that kind of Eastern religion kind of symbolizes that. I mean, real, like, Eastern teachings teach a very powerful gnosis in regard to the Bindu and of being so present that you're not present, or you can see when there's no presence in order to win a fight or a battle. The true mysticism of the Eastern concepts of awareness are supposed to be had by the Jedi, at least ideally. I don't remember the book lore talking about that too much. What I do remember is that the character of Mace Windu, who is a Jedi and on the Jedi Council, is represented in the book lore as having a Sith fighting style that he utilizes, meaning to say he utilizes his emotions when he fights. Very interesting. I'll return to this point. So, in this story, you have Anakin Skywalker, basically a little child who was born of immaculate conception, no father, mother sold into slavery. He's basically a little slave kid, a talent for technology, inventing all kinds of stuff, winning races, right? The pod races, and I think it was episode one. And growing up in such a way where all the themes of trauma and toxicity are rehashed and repeated in cycles with no true connection ever really taking place except through Emperor Palpatine, who is a Sith Lord, who we learn later was masquerading as a leader of the Republic, but only to really be a Sith Lord in hiding and in great patience and in great time. And those are the two monsters of beingness for those who haven't figured it out. The true powers of life are patience and time. And you notice it was the Sith Lord, Emperor Palpatine, who was in possession of those two artifacts of beingness, which is why he came out victorious and the Empire took over. And the very weak Jedi Council was destroyed by clones. What was it, Order 66? Yes, I'm pointing out that either polarity is ultimately weak because as is the symbolism of gate 15, we as humans are looking to find balance through extremes. We can't find the center point without experiencing the extremes. And at its most lowest frequency and superficial vibration, 15 represents these extremes. It also rules the liver, which, when for those of you who hold grudges or too emotional, the liver can get not too emotional, but too resentful, holding on to anger, holding on to resentment. Your liver will get, it'll get angry, and you'll feel it. You'll feel like it heat up. And the point here is that we as humans, we really seek a balance. Even if we don't seek a balance, we're always seeking the balance. In going in extremes, we're seeking the balance because to go into an extreme and to survive it is to go back to balance. And then to go back to the opposite extreme. Or rather, to go from extreme to extreme to extreme to extreme until you reach the center point. And you hover around the center point because who really dwells there? And so we have Anakin who, again, sold into slavery, and then they find him and he has all these midi-chlorians, and they're like, oh my God, we got to take him to the Jedi Council. We got to train this guy. And the Jedi Council says, oh, there's some kind of myth or story about a chosen one who will bring balance to the Force. It must be him. Fuck him. He's too threatening. We're not going to train him, but you can, Obi-Wan, you can train him. So it's rejection after rejection after rejection. And as he grows older, it's true that he is a great talent, a great fighter, a great intelligence. But he seems to have developed some emotional trauma that has stunted his emotional growth and has continued a pattern of toxicity that is represented in his character of and his like little pokes and jabs at Obi-Wan of impatience, impetuousness. And then he has this secret, unrequited, unprotected sexual relationship with Padme, who's like the princess or something. And it's like a hidden relationship. You can't get any more plutonic underworld than that. Having such a tortured youth, being in slavery, his mom dying in slavery, never having a father, being rejected from the Jedi Council when you're obviously talented. So that's like fatherhood rejected over and over and over again. Changing caregivers. A trusted guide who really took him on as his father in a way, Obi-Wan, like leading him. And yet Obi-Wan probably did the best he could, but he also had another guide in Palpatine and who was behind the scenes grooming him the whole time, grooming his dark side. And then so some people might describe and say, oh, it's too sudden. His character arc shifted too quickly into Darth Vader. He was Darth Vader's from the beginning. He was a plutonic underworlder from the beginning. And even Hayden Christensen has Moon in Scorpio. The actor represents this archetype really well. And I haven't went any further to look at his human design or any Pluto aspects. But right there, Moon in Scorpio is a Pluto Moon pretty much aspect. And so, and with the relationship with Padme, that's a Pluto Venus aspect. With the father not being present, I would say there's no Pluto Sun aspect because Pluto Sun usually the father's overpowering and the father is present. Pluto Mercury, his sensibility wasn't as sharp as it might be with a Pluto Mercury, but it could be argued. That could be argued. So who Anakin represented was the opposite extreme of he was being groomed. His dark emotions were being groomed and developed. And he was being confused by all the sides that seemed to be supporting him, but evidenced by a huge transition and a huge Saturn return. He had to make a decision. He was at a crossroads. He was totally confused. Who loved him, who didn't, who was supporting him, who didn't. And he let his ego take over. He wasn't able to dissolve the ego and respond to his body's intelligence and do what was correct. And it could be argued that with the destruction of his ego from childhood, that his ego was the last vestige that he was holding on to during this crisis, and he wasn't able to attain any really grounded spiritual essence and balance. And so you have a character who was on the selfless side or the selfish side and kind of got crucified on the cross of both polarities without being able to find center and balance. Arguably until the end of Return of the Jedi when he saved Luke Skywalker, his son. And it was then and killed the Emperor, that it was then at that moment it could be argued that he saved himself and that he found balance. But or and I hope it's clear what I'm expressing because I felt a real need to express this lack of awareness of balance that people seem to have in conversations with friends and I just felt a need to bring this up. This is something that was hammered into me in the early 2000s when I read Val Valerian's Matrix books, which underscored and amplified the values of balance and the importance of balance and not total selfishness or total selflessness, not either, but a center point, but a point of balance where you're integrating both the need to take care of yourself and love yourself and do what's best for you and at the same time retain that love for others and for those that you care for those that are close to you. And so to retain that balance, to be in support of both polarities. And no character better represents that in the Star Wars series than Mace Windu, who I heard actually from a friend actually argued for having a purple lightsaber in the Star Wars series, which is incredible because usually the Jedis would have like a blue lightsaber and the Sith Lords would have a red. And so what does purple represent but the integration of those two polarities? So what better representation than the color purple? And we don't need to go into the purple revolution of the prince or the politicians. I'm not talking about that kind of stuff. I'm talking about an integration of just red and blue, those two colors, and purple representing an integration of that. So what's really important is there's this scene in the end of Return of the, is it Return of the Sith? Am I getting that name wrong? Hope not. Um, there's a scene where Mace Windu goes into the office of Palpatine, and he's not called Emperor Palpatine, he's called something else, Counselor, or I forgot. Anyway, he goes in there with two other alien Jedis, and they go in there to arrest Palpatine. And right away, he takes out his lightsaber and turns into his Emperor form. And almost immediately, the other two Jedis are killed. But Mace Windu, represented by Samuel Jackson, starts successfully fighting the Emperor and winning the battle. And you see on his face, he's expressing dark, intense emotions as he's winning that fight. And for all intents and purposes, he won that fight. Yes, it was a Jedi who represented true balance. Yes, that's true. It wasn't a Sith Lord. It was Mace, not the others, not the other weak Jedis, very weak, who did not know how to integrate their dark side and their light side together. But you have a Jedi who was able to make that integration. And as he was destroying the Emperor, as he was winning and the Emperor was dying in that battle, you have the problematic character that quote unquote was to bring balance to the Force. You have Anakin Skywalker walk in and sit there in the crux and the crux and crucifixion of the circumstances of the light side and dark side extremities being represented before him. And him seeing someone who was one of his guides, he wasn't seeing, it was very interesting that just to step back for a moment from this character arc moment for Anakin Skywalker, it was very interesting that it wasn't Obi-Wan Kenobi that went in there to fight the Emperor, because that would have been a true test of heart for love of which teacher, whose teacher he favored. Instead, it was Mace Windu, who was not a teacher of Anakin, who was not close to him, but who he respected nonetheless. And so Anakin comes in and he, if you guys remember, he basically kills Mace Windu by cutting off his hands. Because once he does that, of course, the Emperor is going to take power and destroy him, which is what he did. And so he made a decision in that moment because he didn't want Palpatine killed. Now, it's a very interesting moment because think about what that represents had Mace Windu won. And what does that even like ideologically represent in a film, in a Hollywood film? If the character of balance won, interesting, isn't it? How often do films, how many films do we have that represent a great character or leader or warrior or archetype of human as being someone that's balanced? It rarely does that. It's always a character that's good, quote unquote, good. And there's always a character that's bad. We always get the polarities, good and the bad, the evil and the good, to reinforce the unending religious programming that just dominates and controls us at every turn and pulls us back right when we realize that it's possible to integrate balance and to be one's own person and make your own decision and to alleviate fear by your own will and your own trusting of your own essence and understanding and your and trust of your own vision. And yet every film repeats the propaganda. Every film reiterates endlessly the programming of good and bad, good and bad, good and evil. Oh, you're evil. Oh, you're good. Oh, you're evil. Oh, you're good. And I love to play that game myself as a symbolic dark sider because I just because no one understands balance. There's not even a word for it. Balance cider? I don't know. It sounds like a form of apple cider or something, a drink. So it's just so frustrating to know, to have this awareness sometimes and to see just the programming so strong that when I've expressed this over the many years, what, 25 years I've known this, I've studied this knowledge, this awareness of this, and to see myself say it and repeat it and reiterate it. And you know, I don't say it enough. I don't even remember the last time I talked about it on my channel. But it's so important, especially during this time. Returning to this gate 15, June 20th to June 25th. These dates coming up. I mean, we're at the midpoint of the cycle that's going to become complete in 2026. And I'm talking about the Aries vanishing point. Neptune and Saturn will solidify there. And then in 2027, early January, February, March, we'll have the solidification of the 2027 cross of the sleeping phoenix, right angle cross, a 400-year cycle for humanity. And I don't know where this awareness stands in relation to those exactly. Not right now, this moment, nor do I need to. Here, I want to make the point that although representing extremes, it's not about extremes. And the scale of human consciousness is not about a vertical, you know, good on top, bad on the bottom. That's not what it's about. Nope. It's about a horizontal line and a center point. We live in a world of polarities. We all get to play dress up and play Halloween every day and pretend we're this, qualify that, judged as this, judged as that. And, you know, we're all playing with the polarities. We're all doing our best to find the center point. Or we're not. Or some of us are happy sitting in the polaric extremes. and taking on identification as a light sider or a dark sider. And there's a, I haven't got into this too much, but there's still such a strong New Age hijack. And I just call them New Age casualties. There's still a lot of people who think that, oh, it's just all going to be great. It's all going to be gravy. It's all going to be this and that. Oh, let's save humanity. Oh, let's save other people. Just clueless, just lost and clueless. There's no one to save. What you vibrate, who you are, you being in your own heart, touches everyone around you every day of your life. Because you being in your heart allows another person to be in their heart. And it sounds so cliche, but we are all the central vanishing points of awareness. In our field, there's no boundaries almost to our auric field. It touches everyone, it touches around us. And that is what the other side likes to call quote unquote saving humanity. That is the true beingness for others in connection for humanity. That is us being ourselves, and that's the highest one can do, one can express. And then on the other side, you have the dark siders who are happy to call themselves dark siders as well. And they're where they're at. They know where they're at. They're more aware than the light siders are because they've made the conscious decision to be in that polarity and to play in that polarity. And do they go to the center point? Do they go to, of course, they have those that they love as well. So it can be argued that there really doesn't exist these extremes of polarities, but they do exist. And, we're all moving about. We're all moving about horizontally on this imaginary line of awareness to that center point and away from it all the time. And so hopefully this week you'll get that reminder. And I hope this title, The Great Heights and the Corresponding Depths of Compassionate Beingness, resonates some kind of meaning for you. Really, to me, it symbolizes the polarity of, the greater, and this is usually a shock to people when I express this as well, the greater the heights that you have of experience, the greater the corresponding depths. There's a certain ecstasy in the underworld and experiencing underworld things, extreme things. And the corresponding that depths that come with that are just they're almost like greater echoes of the underworld. Because heights and depths really are only those are extremes, but they're extremes in a way that's related to no, I can't use that metaphor right now, but it's just fascinating to me because as humans, we have the capacity to experience great depths. And that's what suffering brings. It brings depth and knowledge. And suffering and trauma and all those things, we call it toxic because it's built on projections and mirroring with others and not seeing someone for who they are and not seeing yourself for who you are. And so that polarity of healthiness is a different polarity. It's like it's not having extreme highs or lows at all. It's almost like a state of just boringness. And 15 can represent that too. It represents the reason why it represents extremes is because it wants to escape from the dullness of reality, of the dullness of perception, of not being able to pick up on a deep integration or deep kind of emptiness in the center of being, a power to find a certain state in meditation, or just a core part of yourself that nothing else can touch in the alcove of the heart, in the alcove of the vortex heart. And this is what it is. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. Let other people know if you like my content. And I'll see you guys on the 26th when I do the next gate or any other videos I do from now on. From now, I think I'm going to do a video with Gary Saturday. We'll see how that goes. We might do it on the economic, on the Aries vanishing point, and at least on my side, and Uranus entering into Gemini from the perspective of the economic system and what's happening with that. And so stay attuned.